Hello, and welcome to Recapping with Delora
and Ashley.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Recapping Podcast.
Also, rate, review, and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the things.
We want to hear your thoughts on the movies and shows we review.
Leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts or our YouTube channel, and we will read them during the show.
Or reach out to us on social media. We love talking all things entertainment and pop culture with you.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you. Hi, Ashley.
Hello, hello, hello. What's up?
I'm super excited about our recap today. But before we get into it, I have a question for you. If you were a vampire, what would you miss the most?
Definitely the sun.
Yeah.
I love nice, beautiful weather. And so to have to live in perpetual darkness, what a bummer.
Yeah. It's definitely the sun and food, probably.
I don't know if I would crave food because I feel like once you got the bloodlust, what is food? You know?
What's the point of teeth if all you're going to do is be on a liquid diet, you know?
Well, because you're also ripping flesh.
Yo, we are recapping Interview with the Vampire. It is an original AMC series. Season 1 is now available on Netflix, and we're recapping the first 3 episodes today. All right, so it is a Southern Gothic horror vampire drama. It is a total of 7 episodes, rated MA. As I mentioned, it is available on AMC, and the first season is available on Netflix. It premiered October 2nd, 2022. And here's a quick summary. In the year 2022, the vampire Louis Dupont de Locke lives in Dubai and seeks to tell the story of his life or afterlife to renowned journalist Daniel Mowley. Beginning in early 20th century New Orleans, Louis' story follows his relationship with the vampire Lestat de Loncourt and their formed family, including teen fledgling Claudia. Together, the vampire family endures immortality in New Orleans and beyond. As the interview continues in Dubai, Mowley discovers the truth beneath Louis' story. Here's the cast. Jacob Anderson is Louis Dupont du Lac. Sam Reed is Lestat. We have Assad Zaman as Armin and Eric Bogosian as Daniel Mowley. And shout out to Ray Down Chong as Florence Dupont du Lac. That was a pleasant surprise. The creator of the series is Roland Jones, and the great Anne Rice was a producer of this series. Here's the ratings. Rotten Tomatoes. Critics gave this show 98%, and the audience score is 79%, and Google users gave this show 84%. Ashley, what is your grade for Interview with the Vampire?
So I have not gotten a chance to see season 2 yet. So this is really strictly off of season 1. It's an A for me. I really thoroughly enjoyed this rendition of Interview with the Vampire. Obviously, the film from the 90s with Brad Pitt, with Tom Cruise,
Christian Slater,
with Kirsten Dunst is iconic, and it was my introduction to Interview with the Vampire. But this series, being able to really take their time with telling this story, and I think having one of the beloved characters from me from Game of Thrones as the lead as Louis, and just really delving into the richness of New Orleans, and just a lot of factors played into this that really made it very rich to me, even beyond just loving vampires. And the vampire stuff did not disappoint either. Like, so much so I'm like, this is really dark. Like, this is really a deliberation of like faith and humanity
Yep.
and what does it really mean to be a vampire? Can I still have a soul? Like, I know that Lewis as a character struggled with that, but it's so much richer as a black man in the
Hmm.
South having to deal with
Yep.
this. And the chemistry between these two men in this series was hot,
Girl,
fire hot.
I
It
was
was
like, yo.
some acting, baby, because yeah. And it was just, I mean, it gave me what all that I needed for it to give me. So it's an A for me. What about for you?
It's an A for me as well. This was previously a hidden gem for me. What I love about it is it's lush, it's gorgeous. The acting, the acting. I mean, Louis Lestat, phenomenal. Like when Louis changes in that church, that monologue had me like I was invested. Okay.
The
It also
church scene
gives
made me feel some type of way. Oh,
we'll get there. We'll get there. But uh, I felt like there was budget. Like I just felt like
oh,
it was
absolutely. It looked like a
so
film set for sure.
yes. And to your point earlier, it's like they had room to breathe. And I felt like some of the writing was poetic in some instances. I'm like, I know Louis is a well-read man and he's been around for like over 100 years, but it was just so beautifully said. And even noticing the nuances of Louis when he first turned to him in Dubai. His I don't know if you noticed, but his accent is so different. I'm like, Jacob is that dude, okay?
Well, I noticed definitely the level of sophistication, the way he even moves his
Yes.
body, all those things have
Yes.
changed from even humanity to non-humanity, right?
Yes.
There's that shift originally, but to your point, yes, you definitely can tell he that's the beautiful thing about being able to be a vampire, right? Is that you don't lose your physical beauty and age, but you have such
Mhm.
a wisdom and maturity because
Yes.
you've been around for such a long time. That's what makes so many of them so alluring.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And it's entertaining and it's hilarious. There were moments where I was cackling. And to your point, the dark stuff is dark, but the witty stuff is just as good, just as sweet. All right, let's get into this spoiler alert. Episode 1, in throes of increasing wonder, in 2020, Louis Dupont du Lac tells his story to journalist Daniel Mowley. In 1910, Louis lives in New Orleans as the executor in chief of his family's fortune. But when he meets the vampire Lestat, Louis' life begins to unravel in unearthly ways. The series starts off with a masterclass type commercial for Daniel Mowley, right? He's a pretty much like a revered journalist. We see him at home and he was like, okay, been there, done that. You can tell life has been lifing, right? And then one day he gets a box of cassette tapes in the mail. First of all, where is he going to play these cassette tapes? Like, that's my question, right?
I just saw a Bluetooth in Sam's Club that had a cassette tape.
What?
Yeah, I was like, oh, cool. I'm not gonna buy it, but cool.
What I love about this version compared to the original movie is they had already met. So they're revisiting this conversation. According to Louis, this is about truth and reconciliation. My question to you is, when do you think stories are worth telling? Because that conversation came up. It's like, we originally talked about this in 1973. We obviously put it down. It's 2020. I just think it's interesting to ask that question, and so I wanted to get your perspective.
Really quick before I answer that, that commercial looked so real that for a
So
second
real.
I was like,
Yes.
wait, am I did I somehow get on Netflix's ad tier?
Did the show start? That was the question.
Like I literally was like, what the when did I get on the ad supported tier of Netflix? And I was
So
like,
good.
oh, right. This is a part of the show. So kudos to that cinematographer because that's
Well,
amazing.
done extremely well.
So, to your question, when is a story worth telling? Nobody can really answer that, I don't think, except the observer and the subject. Like, I think that's a very personal choice that, especially when we're talking about a life and like a life lived. This goes into like discussion about biopics and things like that, right? Why some people choose to go over the entire breadth of a person's life, and some biopics only choose to focus on certain subsections of a person's life,
Right.
because it just depends on the observer, how they choose to tell it and how much they can get from the subject about the story. And so when we're talking about 1973, the difference is they were both in their infancy of life in certain ways, right? Like Louis was still really in the infant stages, I guess, of his vampire life, in terms of feeling more settled, feeling more himself, getting his bloodlust under control, all these things. And then as a journalist, the other guy is still in his infant stages of like his development in terms of crafting narrative, asking questions. Because even now, as he's
Yeah.
older, he's like, these were dumb questions, or I didn't
And he's
follow
like,
up the way I
fact
should
check.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think it's very, very much based on that, right? It's like it just depends on how ready you are as a subject and how ready the person who's observing you is to really be able to delve into it the way they need to. And also how important it's going to be that anybody cares.
Exactly. Exactly. Because we talk about this all the time in our hot topics. Like people that you reveal one day could be going to jail the next. And it makes you revisit a lot of the behavior leading up to that moment, right? And you're left wondering what to trust, what societal thinks about it, because society evolves and changes as well, right? And like, are they ready for this story? Like thinking about the child stars, if they had shared their story sooner, would we have had the ears to listen?
I don't think so in a lot of cases.
I agree. So Louis talks about Storyville, which is essentially the red light district of New Orleans, which was a real place, by the way. It doesn't exist anymore. Again, the conversation of, someone's narrative and what is actually truth, I think is going to be a theme throughout this series. One of the things that stuck out to me was he was like, I inherit my father's estate and my product was desire. And Dan was like, you were a pimp. That tickled me. And what I thought was very interesting was that we didn't get from the film. So I'm going to do a lot of comparisons as well to the 1994 film. Obviously the timeline is different. So in the film it was 1791 and Brad Pitt was flat out a slave owner. Like he was mourning the death of his family, but it was essentially him being young and hot and on the freaking plantation. And I was just like, yo, this is a lot watching it as a grown woman. You know what I mean?
I haven't watched it
Uh
in a while.
oh, I watched it for this recap. And here we're, as you mentioned, early 1900s. And obviously we're no longer dealing with slavery, but in New Orleans was always makes their history very interesting is the Creole class, right? They're essentially a step above the regular Negro because their sires claim them or something, and they got a chance to benefit from their wealth. That plays a significant role in this particular story because Louis navigating this world as a Black man, you learn very quickly where his place is in the society. Sometimes he's accepted, sometimes he's not. When he was dealing with the alderman after an incident at one of his houses, he was like, take your hands off of me, nigga. And I was like, what? What? And he still helped him. And I was like, this is the same man you still play cards with behind the scenes. I just thought that was an interesting dynamic that they chose to see because I know that it's had to happen in real life. I'd love to get your thoughts on Louis.
He was in a position that I imagine was not easy. And I think he only came to realize that as the show progresses, but he was trying to provide for the family, right? Because his dad essentially had almost lost the family fortune by the time he passed away. And so he had to kind of do what he had to do to navigate business wise. And he's a Black man in the South. So unfortunately, he had to take a lot of the brunt of racism without any power to do anything about it. And that, that sucks. Like it hurt to see him, just like it does in any project, be demeaned, be talked down to during this era. I mean, obviously, this wasn't slavery, so it wasn't quite as visceral as certain things are when we see it depicted, but it still hurts at this time where we were seen as, beneath them and given little opportunities. So he had to kind of shuck and jive, honestly, to do what he needed to do business wise.
Were you surprised that he visited other desire palaces? Like, do you feel like it was part of him maintaining accessibility to this exclusive world?
Yes, and I also think he enjoyed being in the mix of those people and like that life because it mattered to the businesses that he knew he had to run, right? Like he needed to know who the customers were and who the other business people were that were in play in that industry. So it's just like it's like networking for him. Like that's what it came down to.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point. I feel like the way Louis was moving when we first meet him, I think he embodies this statement of you never know who's watching you. It was
Neither can you.
Girl, the interaction that he had with his brother, I thought it was very rich that Louis, who is practically a pimp, and his brother is like a wannabe preacher. You can't get more polar opposite than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Louis getting Paul together caught the attention of Lestat. I laughed at myself when I put this in my notes, but I was like, let's talk about this meet cute. Because was it
No,
cute?
if that's
It
what we're gonna call
absolutely
it.
was not. So he shows up to his favorite pleasure house, not the one that he owned, but one of the expensive ones. And he was looking for his Miss Lily. And Louis went straight to his weak spot. Like he was all over her and he knew he was rubbing Louis the wrong way. Apparently, Lestat was supposed to go to St. Louis and he decided to stay around because he caught the attention of Louis and Lestat had him in a trance. We get the interaction between Louis and Lestat. And Lestat is essentially telling Louis, he's like, do you suffer from these indignities for a larger purpose? Like he's speaking to him as a man, he's speaking to him as a Black man in the South, especially in these private card games behind the scenes. Do you think Lestat actually cared? Or do you feel like it was a tool of manipulation to get to Louis?
I think it could be a combination of both, but it's complicated with Lestat because I don't know what is in his heart. Like
he is so hard to read.
Lestat is a very complicated, complex character at the point that we're meeting him in. This is not Queen of the Damned. He did not just get turned. We're not finding out his origin story. He's been around, he's seen some things, he's lived life. And so at this point, it seemed to be that his interest in Louis was predator to prey. So in that sense, everything felt like a manipulation because what else does he want from him but to have him as a vampire does, a human. So exactly. I can't say that I feel like he cared about him yet, but I think he was genuinely interested right now. He had his attention.
So what I was getting to earlier about the difference between Louis' family from the movie to the show, in the show, he actually has a mother, a brother, a sister, and a more in-depth pre-vampire life. Lestat and Louis have been hanging out, and guess who's coming to dinner? A French vampire. What do you say? Ain't he white? He's not white, he's French.
I would have loved to hear what they talked about. Because when they had the scenes of them like sitting on the bench and talking and stuff, I'm like, what do y'all have to discuss? Like, what? What is Lestat not utterly bored by talking to you? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I was thinking.
That's a great point. Yeah. But again, to your point, I'm thinking Lestat is just luring
Yeah,
Louise,
like
so
he was
they're
probably
just talking
just
about
sitting there
whatever.
listening to
Yeah,
Louis pour his heart out. And but I feel like they did become friends there for a little minute. So there had to be something. But just I don't know how best to explain it to you and to like the audience, but y'all know what I mean. Like when someone has so much more like lived experience and is on like another
yes,
plane of existence, you have to be like a parent speaking to a young child or something. You know what I mean? In
yeah.
terms of the dynamic, like what is it that we can really sit and like talk about? Because you don't know even a third of what I know, and my senses are heightened, and I can read your mind, and you know.
Well, speaking to that, so in the film, Louis' character is dealing with the death of his wife and child. And so he's operating in a state of like depression and grief. Whereas in the show, I don't know what do you think Lisette saw in Louis, if that's the case, because it was easier to say in the film, oh, Lestat is taking advantage of this vulnerable man. Louis in the show does not come off as that level of vulnerable. Now, don't get me wrong. Was he probably emotionally constipated? Probably, because he talked about, like, I never talked to nobody the way I talked to Lestat. I don't know. Was it his fire?
Think it was that. It was probably a lot of internal turmoil too that Lestat picked up on that we just couldn't register. Because again, he's in the industry he doesn't
Yes.
necessarily feel morally good about. He just had to
Yeah.
pull a knife on his brother. He's also a closeted gay man
Yes. Yep.
fighting his sexuality. So I think there was probably a lot of internal turmoil and conflict. It's like you see someone who's broken a little bit,
Yeah.
and he
That's a
still
great
saw
point.
someone who's like broken.
Yeah. Well, this dinner, Paul did not hold back. He asked him, how did you come to know Christ? And that scene, Ashley, with Lestat and those dilated eyes, I was like, yo.
I appreciated this opportunity to get insight into Lestat's mind. Because to this
Yes.
point, again, we
We
don't
know
know
nothing.
Lestat.
He's that weird stranger in the dark, right? Like,
But to hear him be someone who had such conviction at one point, who felt abandoned by God. And so this is like he totally went to the dark side. That was
completely,
fascinating.
to the point where he revels in it, talking about there's an ocean between him and Christ. I was like, yo. And then you also saw a little bit of that manic fury that he keeps hitting
And also
so
the
well.
control, right?
Yes.
The mind control he has over people, which I hated as a character.
Yeah. This told me everything I needed to know about Louise' mom. She's just like, oh, the humidity gets to us sometimes. You want some ice wine? I'm like, oh, so this is the woman who's willing to turn a blind eye so she is no, she's not putting in any type of discomfort.
She's a rich black woman in the South. She's used to her creature comforts for sure. Can I just say too, in terms of going into the series, is I don't know how much people think about it, but Lestat is a villain.
Yes. Yes.
Lestat is a villain.
Now, we talk about this all the time. Where we are in culture, there's a lot of morally gray characters, right? But Lestat was a clear villain in the 1994 film, right? In this one, I think we get to see more color, but at the end of the day go in.
Yep.
Speaking to sexuality, Lestat finally got Louis in his clutches, and they have a night together with Lily.
Honey.
I was like,
He had
oh,
that
we're
man
going
floating.
there.
He had that man floating.
He took a little bite, but he got his teeth into him. And guess what? That was the beginning of the end, Ashley. Truly.
That's a level of desire I don't know if I ever need to experience.
um, Paul sees right through it and warns Louis. He's like, Lestat is the devil here to take souls. And I'm like, yo,
Say what y'all want to say
yo.
about Paul, but he ain't tell no lies.
He surely did not. He surely did not. But also, speaking of Paul, we have the sister's wedding. Louis has a great time. I don't think he had that much fun in a long time. And they go to the rooftop and he sees his last sunrise. In part, Paul walks off the roof. Girl, I did not see that coming. Now, they alluded to Paul being, mentally unstable, right? Like he's been hospitalized, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was so heartbroken for that to have happened in front of Louis, because Louis, again, he has such a hard exterior, but he takes a lot in.
And he loved his brother, and his brother just commits suicide in front of him, like without any rationale or understanding why.
The part that really made me sick is how his mother blamed him.
Bruh.
I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And actually, when it rains, it pours, because he also found out that Lily was dead too, that her body was drained. He was so distraught that he went to freaking church to confess of his sins just for Lestat to walk in. Now, first of all, the way I was taught, the church is holy ground, right? Like, there is no way that Lestat should have been able to walk up in that church the way he did and kill those priests.
This scene, I was like, maybe I shouldn't have watched this series. I was like, Lord Jesus, protect me,
Period.
because what are we saying? What are we doing? Like, I don't think I could have been, I don't know if I could have been on set that day if I was working on that show.
Oh no, I would not have. No.
Like, we gonna have him literally rip into a church, kill two priests, one by punching him through the head, and then taking Lewis's life as well. I mean, it was so
It's more than provocative. It is
like uh, clutching pearls.
the bare minimum. A gasp.
Anyone who is like devout,
Yeah.
they would have turned the channel immediately. It was
Yeah.
disturbing.
Blasphemous. There we go.
It was blasphemous. It really was. I was like, should I be watching this? I said this on this last watch. I was like, have we gone too far? Like,
Too far. I mean, let me know, Ashley. Let me know. I want to respect your
we in
views.
it. I mean, I gave it an A. We in it. I've seen it. It's just like, it's some of those moments with like Game of Thrones where you watch something, you like, I can't go on,
They're twins? Huh.
Girl.
Huh.
And this was just from like a spiritual religious standpoint of like, as a show and as a decision creatively, how far is too far? Like, this even comes with our pop stars, right? From Lil Nas X to Madonna, and like the
Girl.
cosplay and the having sex with the devil and all this stuff. Like, how far is too far artistically when it comes to playing about the devil?
Yeah, that's real talk. But the part that was killing me was Lisette talking about, I love you. You were loved. What?
He's just lonely.
Yes. Yes. Because what is love at this point? I knew you for a few weeks. Like, I don't understand.
And what do you love about him? Do you love
Yes.
his subservience? Because that's not love. It's like, that's like loving your animals. You love him because he needs you, and you can tell him and control him and tell him what to do. He looks to you for guidance in a way that you crave.
Well, speaking of love and sexuality, comparing it with the movie, there were a lot of undertones. And honestly, the undertones weren't as under as I anticipated for a 90s movie. I was like, oh, y'all are alluding to some things, right?
Because they never touched in that, right?
They never touch, but it's a lot of face-to-face, like soft talking moments. Okay, because with the vampires, also the hands too. Is everything's very fluid, and in this series, they just literally like, we together. We together.
No question. Lestat said, "We only got one coffin. You can be on top."
Episode 2. After the phantoms of your former life, beginning his life as a vampire, Louis learns the rules of vampirism from his maker and companion Lestat. Louis discovers increasing differences between himself and Lestat. In Dubai, Louis reveals more of his modern day vampire lifestyle to Maui. Lestat is giving Louis a whole new world, literally. It was really funny because in the beginning, it's always fun being completely blissed out. Dan compared it to being fully loaded. And
Off that cocaine.
yes. And Lisette is teaching Louis how to hunt. He wants to go for the outgoing sailor, but Lestat was like, no, you want somebody nobody's gonna miss. And I was like, dang.
That dude had a whole child.
Whole child. The tractor salesman, Louis was like, I don't like it. He was like, the death, rebirth, the coming out, and homicide. That was a lot. And Ashley, I completely agree. But is there a step to step? I do personally believe that Lestat was a horrible teacher. I do.
I don't even know if I feel like he was a horrible teacher. What I think is that Lestat can't be a teacher for Louis because they are very different, even as vampires. Like Lestat is happy to indulge in the worst instincts
Yes.
of being
He
a vampire,
thrives.
which to him are the
Yes.
best instincts. But Louis has retained his soul right
Yes.
now in a different way, and he can't abide by like the joy of the hunt in the same way. And so, no, had he had somebody, or even if he had met Lestat at the beginning of his journey, I think this would have been very different. Because again, I'm a reference Queen of the Damned. That's a totally different Lestat that we meet from Stuart Townsend playing that character than the Lestat we get from Tom Cruise and from this gentleman in this series.
Yes. And shout out to Sam, because one, he is very handsome. But he played the heck out of Lestat. Like,
You can't tell me he ain't Lestat after watching
period. Period. Let's talk about some of these characters really quick. What do you think of his performance as Lestat? So we kind of answered that. And how does he balance cruelty and charm in his role?
Up to this point, I think he balances it with this is the courting stage of their relationship. He is attentive. He is understanding. He is a shoulder for Louis with everything that he has going on. And he seems to like speak to a deeper understanding of what he needs than he gets from anybody else in his life, right? His mother has shunned him. His sister, as he put it pities him.
Yes.
His brother is dead. He doesn't have anybody else. So you're getting somebody in a very vulnerable time and weaseling your way in. So I think he tread carefully at this point. We don't see his full cruelty on display with Louis yet.
We do not, but in this episode, I do make note that his behavior is starting to change notably. It's almost like the different phases of relationships, right? Like
right before they start beating you.
Ooh, girl. Best foot forward, what they call love bombing, literally. Because that's what he did right before he changed Louis to like, okay, now I got you. These are my real colors, you know. And to your point, it does get abusive. He kept referring to him as a fledgling vampire. Louis doesn't want to kill. He's like, give me the rats. Okay, I can't go in the sun. Obviously, I have this bloodlust, but I don't want to kill nobody. I respect it. They have serious fights, so much so that one of my favorite lines is he's like, I don't like to sleep angry. I'm like, y'all are ridiculous on this show. They're able to have a very successful business. Louis said in this span of time, they made a mountain of money. And in the present, he and Dan are having a 7-course meal. And what was so funny was the variation of blood he partook in. Was there a particular dish that stood out to you, Ashley?
Probably him still eating one human dish a week when he said it tastes like paste or chalk or whatever.
Yes.
What a sacrifice.
But that, I feel like that exercise grounds him, right?
It does. It keeps him,
in his soul.
Yes, that exactly. It keeps him relating to that part of himself that has died.
Things are heating up on the humanity side. I don't think the white folks of his town like how successful he is.
Of course not.
In this one particular situation, the Esquire was like, oh, he's an exceptional Negro. Mind you, Louis has been surviving off of rats and animals. It's a lighter fare, so he's not as strong as he would be if he drank from humans. He got pissed off and kills the lawyer. What I think is also interesting about this too is the fight between him and Louis. He was like, why did you eat him? He's an important man. You don't want to get anybody who's going to be missed. And he was like, well, he called me an exceptional Negro. And he was like, you're a library of confusion. But I get it. I get it. Do you feel like for the show, do you like how race is utilized in this telling? Or do you think it's well done? Or do you think it's exploitative of the times that we're in?
No, I don't think it's exploitative at all. I think it's makes sense. Like I said, we knew we were going to get a different perspective of having a black man have this tale told and what his life and circumstances were going to be like.
Yes. We also meet Antoinette in this episode. It's pretty much telling him like, hey, I like variety. And he's like, aren't I enough? And the way Louis laughs in his face was so rude.
The way
So
Lestat
rude.
laughs.
Oh, I'm sorry. The way that Lestat laughs is so rude. I was like, sir, how dare you? And so Louis was like, okay, I'm going to get my own thing too. Lestat follows him. That is unhealthy behavior. So that means you want your cake and eat it too.
He said, I don't like sharing. This is
Well, he
the
lied to his face talking about I like variety. So he was like, oh, it's okay if I go and do my thing, right?
this is the reason why I don't like Lestat in general, right? It's like the way he handles situations. Again, it's always about power, in my opinion, and control. Like you have to still participate
Yes.
in this moment because you don't want Louis to be able to go off and do his own thing. I heard your hearts beating together, and the lady didn't mean anything. X, Y, and Z. Are we polyamorous or not? Because
Yeah.
ain't no you get to go have your fun, but I'm a kept man over here. Okay, I'm gonna get my swerve on too. So make up your mind.
And I was gonna ask if they had an unbalanced relationship, and they absolutely did. He was like murderer, lover, maker. Honestly, Louis' relationship with Stat is definitely a mindfuck. I would wish that on anyone.
Mm-mm.
And then at the end of the episode, Lestat kills the Italian opera singer, and he screams to Louis. He was like, "Embrace who you are." And yeah, he does succumb to the drinking, but I thought the significance of this particular episode was one, seeing how present day Louis partake, because I think in the episode he said he hadn't killed anybody since 2000. So it's been like 20 years.
Yep.
And essentially, going to episode 3, asking, what was I made for? Shout out Billie Eilish. So episode 3, is my very nature that of the devil? Louis continues his life as a businessman in Storyville when an old friend comes into town. Louis' relationship with Lestat is tested. Louis' business intertwines with growing tensions in New Orleans, leading to a new chapter in Louis' vampire life. Again, more conversations of like, why do I exist? I don't want to kill people anymore. This is some of the first times where fact checking come into play. Apparently, Lestat wrote Wolverine Blues, and Dan was like, his name ain't nowhere near on these old songs. The conversation of the Odyssey of Recollection. I was like, oh, that's a beautiful way of saying you don't remember nothing, right?
Or that the human mind, I mean, for him, it's not the human mind, that the mind can change things and facts over time, which, yes, facts.
Yeah. As I mentioned at the top of the recap, tensions grow in Storyville, they essentially want to take Louis's business from him, and they're blaming the laws, even though they're the ones that make them. And they want him to sell his business for 15 cents on the freaking dollar. Ashley, when I say I was heated, I was like, hot, 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 like stolen Chanel.
Lock me up in jail.
Literally, when dude put the sign colored only, in some ways that felt great to me, Ashley. How about you?
Yes.
I was
He
like,
was fed up.
he
I
was
was
fed up.
fed up for him, especially now that he has this power. I could rip all of your throats out if I wanted to.
And this is me playing nice.
Playing these human games.
And yeah, because one of my questions to you is like, do you blame Louis for his actions? But at the same time, he was pissed, and rightfully so. I think it was definitely the combination of just them playing in his face, right? And then him wanting to not be the example for his people. Like he wanted to stand firm on his business.
Sure, but at the same time, given his powers and the potential that they gave him, it was short-sighted. I
It
think
was.
that the
Yes.
fallout was so swift for the other Black members of that community. And I hated to
Yes.
see that. And it was like, you
Girl.
have such power now, like physical, mental, sensory power, mind reading power. You could have really shifted things. It was just he let his personal feeling situation get the better of him in that time at that moment.
That's an excellent point because what they say in business, take emotion out of it because you don't want to be driven by it. And to your point, it came swift after he killed that alderman. I knew that man was going to be a problem from episode 1 when he said, "You're a tiny man flying too close to the sun, and I'm the sun."
He was like, this is for me and my ancestors right here.
The savage came out, and this is where Lestat was hilarious to me. He was like, "Oh, you're letting your dark gifts show." Essentially, he's like, "Should we make this our anniversary?" I was like, "He is a fool. He is a doggone fool." And again, Louis has a lot of emotions to be a vampire, by the way. Like, I know he's very close to his humanity, but he felt guilty for his rush decisions to retaliate in the way that he did. That he went to the black side of town to savage something, and the episode ends with his light, his Claudia, his redemption. All right, Ashley. Before we end this recap, did you think he ate that baby?
No, I see why he had to ask the question, but no, I did not think he ate his nephew, thankfully.
Yeah. Fun fact, apparently Lestat is based off of Anne Rice's husband. I'm like,
I don't think that's a compliment.
exactly. I was like, okay.
Was she Lewis?
I don't know. But we do see that dynamic in heterosexual relationships through in movies and films. I'm
Sure,
thinking enough. I'm the girl, we can list all
sure.
the
Sleeping with the enemy, there's plenty.
girl. Yeah. And so
To this day, if somebody's cupboard is too organized, it freaks me out because of sleeping with the enemy.
Julia Roberts.
When she opened that cabinet and all her cans were perfect, chills to this day. Perfect. If y'all have not seen Sleep with the Enemy, that was the hallmark way that she knew her husband was in her house. She had escaped. She had faked her death. She had escaped. That's the whole premise. He found her in her house. He had organized her pantry, and that's how she knew he was. It was wholly chilling as a
You know
child
what? I
watching that
love
film.
these old movies that like we watched entirely too young, but it's like
Oh
stuck with
my
us.
God.
Because for me, it's the hand that rocks the cradle for me.
Oh, yes. Rebecca.
Yeah.
Rebecca. She played that character.
She sure did. She sure did. But comparing the two, Lestat, so in the film Lestat was depicted as a flamboyant and cruel mentor, and it has had more of a sinister tone. And then they said for the show he was still cruel, but he had more nuance, so showing a deeper level of affection and manipulation in his relationship with Louis. And I agree. I think there might be one more thing I wanted to talk about: the gore. You typically don't like these, you don't like horror typically, right?
I
But
don't
were you
like
scared?
horror.
Were
No.
you scared?
No. What's
Okay.
funny is that so again, I have to caveat my horror categories in terms of what I do and don't like, because I watch slashers, I watch thrillers, borderline being horrors, but I don't like ghosts and I don't like demons.
In
So
possession,
that's my
yes.
line
I
for
get that.
horror.
I'm there too.
This and a lot of other supernatural things don't bother me whatsoever. But you talk about somebody is possessed? Nah.
Like, no, thank you.
Mm-mm.
Any final thoughts for Interview with the Vampire?
I'm looking forward to rounding out this season and getting more into it, because the deeper we go, the crazier this ish is about to get.
Girl, it's this was good because it was like setting up Louis in this new world, but the mayhem that happens after, lots of fun. Lots of fun.
You know, one thing I kept thinking about Louis Jacobs' character is he's so often described as being this beautiful man. Like Lestat even mentions him as being beautiful so many times.
Yeah.
Was it one of those things where because he's beautiful, he was spared almost in a different way? Like, had he been less attractive physically, like, did he have like, what am I trying to say? Like, was it like
Yeah. Was it
beauty
a target on
bias?
his
Yeah,
target on
was
his
it
back?
yeah, was it
Yeah.
like beauty bias? You know, like he was very physically appealing. And so that physical appeal, just like with a lot of people in life, makes you more of a commodity to some people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought about that quite a bit too, because I don't remember that really. Beauty wasn't really a big thing. I don't remember from the movies. Granted, they were beautiful because it was friggin' Tom Cruise and Brad
First
Pitt.
of all, I
But
I rewatched it for this recap, and Brad Pitt was Brad Pitting
yes, he
in that
was.
movie. He was giving the jawline and the pouty lips and the long hair. See, the thing about Brad Pitt, even though I can't speak to him as a human, but him as an actor, he is so versatile in his beauty that he could be a brunette, a blonde, short hair, long hair. It does not matter.
I think one
And
of the reasons why Mr. and Mrs. Smith broke my heart is because he's never looked better for me. That
for
was
me,
peak
Troy was peak.
physical
But he did
Brad
Troy at the
Pitt.
same time, though. Troy and Mr. and Mrs. Smith was peak Brad Pitt for me. But then I'm like, but there was Legends of the Fall.
True. When he was younger, he had a beauty, but when
Yeah.
he grew into his manly
Man,
manness,
era. Yeah.
and
I'm
again,
here.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, he was comical and he was
Yes.
gorgeous. That's a
And I'm a sucker
killer.
for a good buzz cut.
Me
So
too. Killer
yeah.
combo.
All right, Ashley. If there's nothing else, time for hidden gems.
All right, so I have two hidden gems this week. They have nothing to do with vampires. They're feel good comedies. But the first one is, I'm sure y'all have heard about this show because I feel like it's all over at least my social media. Nobody Wants This, a series on
Yep.
Netflix. Kristen Bell and Adam Brody. I loved this show. I binged it in one sitting.
Oh,
10
I'm still going through it.
girl, 10 half-hour episodes. I keep saying, everybody saying this is like peak millennial fandom for us, because we have Kristen Bell from Veronica Mars, we have
Yeah.
Adam Brody from the OC,
OC.
and you're putting them together. They're friends in real life. We know they're significant others who are also, at least for Adam
Famous.
Brody, also millennial love from
She
Gossip
is.
Girl.
Gossip
Um,
Girl.
Blair. And so, it just gave me all the feels. This is based on, loosely based on Erin Foster, who is a part of the development of the series, her real life, and her relationship with her husband. And
Is he a rabbi too?
he's not rabbi, he is Jewish, and she converted for
Mm-hmm.
him. And it's just one of those series that just made me feel good. The epicness of Adam Brody's Riz, as people are calling it,
Is it really good?
it gave me everything I needed. I'll say that.
Oh, I like I said, I'm not far enough to pick up on. I'm like avoiding all the kissing scenes that people are posting. I'm like, I need to experience it for myself.
I've never fallen for a rabbi till that day. So
I love it. I love it when the guy comes through. I
yeah.
love it when it happens because I feel like it's so few and far between these days.
Yes, he killed it and I
But
really
it's a
enjoyed it.
combination of acting and writing.
For
So
sure.
the
For
writers did
sure.
what they had to do.
And they're both very charismatic in the majority of the roles we see them in anyway. They are seasoned at this thing. And so them coming together was great magic. I really appreciated it. We have to recap that one. Babes is my second hidden gem on Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle Buteau and Alana Glazer, a combo I didn't know I needed until I got it. And I know Michelle Buteau. We've talked about and recapped one of her projects already. And
Thicker.
I had not gotten into Alana Glazer yet. And she was delightful. Like I never watched Broad City.
Oh, I
So
did. It was so ridiculous. So
I didn't
ridiculous.
I didn't know her humor or like her personality type, and I fell in love with her character in this film. She was delightful. So the premise is they are best friends, and Alana Glazer's character gets preggers and has an unexpected pregnancy, and they kind of go down that rabbit hole of what that looks like. And it was just one of those like, you know, friendship is a big factor of life that sometimes can get lost in
Yes.
life and marriage and children and all these things. But, you always should remember and love and show support to your friends in life. So
Oh, I
it
love
was nice
that.
messaging and it was an enjoyable film. So those are my
Mm-hmm.
two hidden gems, Laura. What about you?
I want to talk about the Nobody Wants This really quick. Kylie texted me. She was like, she has a young one. She was like, I had to get up. I couldn't go back to sleep. I watched this in one sitting. So she's just like you. And she loved
Yes.
it. She was like, when is season two? I need it now. And then
Delightful.
did you notice? I feel like there were a lot of freeform alums in the show. So his a bit of a spoiler, the girl he breaks up with, she was from Grownish.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And
Yes.
then the friend who has had the party, she's from
Uh-huh.
sh-
I know the show.
one, yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, because I watched some of that show. Yes,
Same,
that's
same.
true.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
facts.
So I'm just like, oh, shout out to them working. I have two hidden gems. The first one is go watch the freaking movie, the 1994 Interview with the Vampire, starring Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Christian Slater, Antonio Banderas. When I say they had me gagged, I was like, this was 1994. Y'all were giving hair, y'all were giving looks, y'all were giving me everything I ever wanted in terms of just like metrosexual vampires. You know what I mean? Like
What a cast.
the cast. Oh my gosh. And I think it held up pretty well considering we talk about this all the time when we do throwbacks, like the technology or the special effects or whatever. No, it still was, that gothic, that broody. It was a vibe, and it's now a part of my October watching because I'm very seasonal sometimes with my media. It's like it's spooky season. I need to watch the Dracula with my boo, Keanu Reeves and Winona Weiner. Like that adaptation of Dracula is still just really, really good. Ashley, you reminded me that Edward Scissorhands is now available, and I'm gonna be watching that this season too. So yes, watch the movie. And like we said before, the show is phenomenal and it is its own thing. And in some ways, it almost feels like an extension of the movie in some ways, because it's like, we're going to do this again. Here's this conversation with Louis being a reluctant vampire. And my second hidden gem is it was the number one rated R movie, I think, of all time now. Deadpool and Wolverine. Went to the theaters, saw it. So this is what I will say about the movie. I do feel like I'm out of my college boy humor era, right? Like there was a time where Family Guy was everything. I watched every Adam Sandler movie, love Will Ferrell, but I also realized that now as an adult I have options. And they really went for it, obviously, because it's Deadpool, but it's giving dirty gym socks and beer.
I didn't like it. So sorry.
I am in my brie cheese and a good, Chardonnay era. And the things that I loved about this movie, this is a bit of a spoiler alert. The three things I enjoyed most about the movie. Number one, I enjoyed Wolverine's performance. I feel like Hugh Jackman, we okay, speaking of the season, we started our Greatest Showman soundtrack again because that soundtrack is one of my favorites because it's freaking amazing. I'm always in awe of how versatile Hugh Jackman is as an actor to be the Greatest Showman, but starting off as a broody Wolverine. I love that. And he carried this movie for me. That's number three. Number two, I did like the Madonna like a prayer moment at the end in the climax. I thought the build up and the final release was pretty cool. And then my number one thing that I love most about the film was Channing Tatum's accent. It was so ridiculous.
It was.
That is it really brought me joy, and those are the things that kept me in that film, and not Ryan Reynolds. And I love a good Ryan moment. We've recapped several of his projects. I feel like at least one.
Free Guy and the one with the going back in time.
Zoe Saldana. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are my hidden gems. I actually went to the movie theater and I was excited. I was like, look at me doing what I used to do all the time.
Speaking of going to the theater, I did see Beetlejuice. I have to say, for a sequel, I think it was well done. I think it was worth making in the canon of the Beetlejuice legacy. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But thank you. And thank you guys as always for listening. We appreciate you so much. We'll be back, as Delora mentioned, for part 2 of this in a couple of weeks. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you are watching Interview with the Vampire so that you know what we're talking about. And if you've already watched season 2, good for you. Let me get that login so I can watch it too.
That part. Shout out to AMC for our future sponsorship. Okay, thank you.
All right, guys, please share this episode with everybody you know. We so appreciate it. We'll be back. But in the meantime, as always, be blessed.